Okay, Anglo-Saxon first. Yep. The Egyptian army perishes into the Red Sea. Text 16. Da Moses athenode his hand over the sea. Da senden dreiten Mitchell and wind all that night and gewende that say in dryum. In that water where thon twa todod and lay on dry straight through the sea. In that water stood on 12 helfath there straight switchel twingen Hugh Wallace. That on all Israel folk through the sea on thon way to Dryeten him geword and kom halla and gesende through the sea swa Dryeten him behet. Da Pharaoh come to their sea in all his hair, that for he on thon iklen way after Israel folk, and dreired mid allem his folk, and mid allem his weapnum, that quiet dreiten to Moses, Athanathan, hand over the sea, and over Pharaoh, and over all his hair. And he heft up his hand and slow together in alle with their Pharaoh's craft to, and drank hin silver in all his folk that there nay worth furthen on the laugh and lif gebeirede. So liedje Moses and Israel folk foren through the say dryum fotum. Drytum Ali said on tham day Israel folk and der Egyptskra handum. And he gesawan the Egyptian dead up to land worthen the heora eton and tham lande. They he da an kom weron and that Israelish folk on dreden him dreiten and herden God and Moses his theo. Yeah, I might as well read it in Latin while we're at it too. Cumque extendesit Moses manum super mare, abstulit illu dominus flate vento vehementian urente tota nocht, et veritetin sicum divisaque est aqua, et ingressi sunt fili Israel per medium sici maris, erat inam aqua quasi muris a dextera eorum lave, persequentesque Egypti ingressi sunt post eos, et omnius equitatis Pharaonis caris aius, et equites per medium maris, iamque advenerat vigilia maturtina et ecce repetiens dominus super castra Egyptiorum per columnam ignus et nubis interfecit exercitum eorum, et subvertit rotas carum, ferebant terque et profundum dexerant ego Egypti fugiamus Israelum, dominus inum pugnat pro eis contra nos, et ait dominus ad mosum extende manum tuam super mare, ut reventantor aquae ad Egyptio super curris et equites eorum, cumque extendesit Moses manum contra mare, reversum es primo dulu culdo ad priorum locum fugientibusque Egyptius occurrerunt aquae et involvit eos dominus in medis fluctibus. Verversaque sunt aquae et opererunt codus et equites horses cuncti exercitus faronis qui sequentes ingressi ferant mare in the sea, nec unis quidem superfuit ex aius. Filii autem, the children of Israel, filii autem Israel, per exerant per medium sicimaris, in aquae aius erant quasi pro mero et dextres, et as sinistres, right and left. Liberavitque Dominus in de illa Israel de mano Egyptorum, et viderant Egyptios mortuos super litus maris, neo died in the sea, et manum magnum quam user curat Dominus contra eos, timitque populus Domino et crediterent Domino et Moisi servo eus. Well, that was fun. Now, we're going to do a little bit of Middle English. Do a bit of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Let's go and so it's New Year's Eve. And then the night comes in. Yeah. So here he comes. And this is what we're doing here. Let's start in verse. Yeah. Yeah, let's start in verse 20:45. How about that? Then what's Gringulit Grethe, that great Watts and huge and had been sojourned severely, and in his sicker wise, him list prick for point that proud horse then. Actually, let's back it up a little bit. Anyways, while he longest wears and worth on him selvim. Okay, now we're talking about the Green Knight. His coat with the countenance of the clear works, inurned upon velvet vertus stones about baten and bounden, in browded semids, and fairy fair within, with fair pearls. Had left he not the lace, the lady's gift, that forgot not Gawain the god of himself, by he had belted they brawned upon his blades hunches. Then dressed he in durry double him about, swith self his swung sweetly that night. The girdle of the green silk that gay well besimiled. I am not where I want to be. I am way in the future with that. Okay, that little tiny break. Here's the real one. It was about the Green Knight, but not in the place that I wanted. Surprise, surprise. And so, the Green Knight comes for real. And all greyeth in green this gnome on his wades, and straight coat full strict that stit on his sides, a mere mantle above mengst within, with pearl purred apert. The painful clean, with blithe bountiful brights in his hold both, that what's legged for his locks, and laid on his shoulders hem well hulled holes of that same, that spent on his sparley and klein spurs under, of bright gold upon silk boards, barred for Reiche, and Solus undershanks there the skulk rides, and all his vester really what's clean verdure, or green, both the bars of his belt and other blithe stones that were richly railed in his array clean about him and his saddle upon silk works that were too tore for to tell in trifles they hail, that were embroidered above in brides and flags, with gay gaudy of green the gold eye imides, the pendantus of his parture, the proud crowpure, his molanes in all the metal animelled was thin, the stirrups that he stood on stained of the same, so that everything was green. And his armor, after all, in his skirts, that ever glimmered and glint all of green stones, the full that he frecks of fin and that alike certain, a green horse great and thick, a stead full stiff and strain, in broaden bridle quick to the gnome he wats full gain. Well gay what's this gnome geared in green, and they hear of his head of his horse sweet, fairy fanned flax umberfolds his shoulders, a much bread as a brisk over his breast hinges, that with his higlich there that of his head reaches was used in I'm not sure what that used al umbetorn above his elbows, that half his arms there under were hatched in the vice of a king's capatos that closes his swire. The mane of that main horse, much of hit like, well crest and kemmed with knots full many, folding in with full dory about in fairy green, all a hair of the hair, and author of gold, the tail of his topping twinning of the suit, and bodden both with a band of bright green, dubbed with full the stones as they dock lasted, sitting brown with the throng and pally knot aloft, their money belts full bright and brenn gold rungen, such a fold upon fold ne freck that him rides, was never seen in that stall with sits of that time and guys and with guys. He looked at last so light, so said all that him sighs. It seemed as no man might under his dites dries. Ooh, Middle English is a wingdinger. Now, how about fun with a little demonology? Let's see what old King James is up to, shall we? Let's jump right into the beginning with the argument, chapter Demonologie, the first book, between Philomatus and Epistemon, Reason and Matter, and we are going to read it in King James English, just like they would have said it. The exhort of the whole and the description of the Magi special, chapter 1, argument. Proven by the scripture that these unlawful arts in the genre have been and may be put into practice. Philomatus and Epistemon, Reason and Matter. So Philomatus. I am surely very glad to have met with you this day, for I am of opinion that ye can better resolve me of something, whereof I stand in great doubt, nor any other whom with I would have met. Epistemon. In what I can that ye may to spire at me, I am willing and freely tell my opinion. I willingly and freely tell my opinion, and if I prove it not sufficiently, I am heartily content that a better reason carry it away than Philomatus. I think ye of these strange news which now only furnishes purpose to all men at their meeting. I mean of these witches, Epistemon. Surely they are wonderful, and I think so clear and plain confessions in that purpose have never fallen out of any age or country. Philomatus. No question if they be true, but therefore the doctors doubt. Epistemon. What part of it doubt ye of? Philomatus. Even of all, for aught I can yet perceive, and namely that there is such a thing as witchcraft or witches. And I would pray you to resolve me thereof, if ye may. For I have reason with sundry in the matter, and yet could never be satisfied therein. Epistemon. I shall with good will do the best I can, but I think it the difficulter, since ye deny the thing itself in general. For as it is said in the logic schools, contra negantem principia non est disputantem, always for that part, that witchcraft and witches have been and are, the former part is clearly proved by the scriptures, and the last by daily experience and confessions. Philomatus. I know ye well alleged me in Salvus Pythonius, but that as appears not will not make much for you. Epistemon. Not only that place, but divers others. But I marvel why that should not make much for me. Philomatus. The reasons are these. First, ye may consider that Saul, being troubled in spirit, and having fasted long before, as the text testifieth, and being come to a woman that was bruited to have such knowledge and that to inquire so important news, he, having so guilty a conscience for his heinous offences, and especially for that same unlawful curiosity and horrible defection, that and then the woman crying out upon the sudden in great admiration for the uncouth sight that she alleged to have seen, discovering him to be the king, though disguised, I denied by him before, and denied by him before it. It was no wonder, I say, that his senses being thus distracted, he could not perceive her feigning of her voice. He being himself in any other calmer and seeing nothing. Next, what could be or was raised? The spirit of Samuel, profane and against all theology, the devil in his likeness, as unapparent that either God would permit him to come in the shape of his saints, for then could never the prophets in those days have been sure the Spirit spake to them in their visions, or then that he could foretell what was to come thereafter. For prophecy proceedeth only from God, and the devil hath no knowledge of things to come. Epistemon. Yet if ye will mark the words of the text, ye will find clearly that Saul saw the apparition. For giving you that Saul was in an other comma at the making of the circles and conjugations needful for that purpose, as none of that craft will permit any others to beyond at that point. Yet it is evident by the text that how some that once that unclean spirit was fully risen, she called it upon Saul. For it is said in the text that Saul knew him to be Samuel, which could not have been, by the hearing tell only of an old man with unmantle, since there was many more old men dead like Israel nor Samuel, and the common weed of the whole country was mantles. As to the next, that it was not the spirit of Samuel, I grant, in the proving whereof ye need not to insist, since all Christians and whatsoever religion agrees upon that, and none but either mere ignorance, nor necromancers, nor witches doubts thereof, and that the devil is permitted at sometimes to put himself in the likeness of the saints. It is plain in the scriptures where it is said that Satan can transform himself into an angel of light. Neither could that bring any inconvenience with the visions of the prophets, since it is most certain that God will not permit him to deceive his own, but only such as first wilfully deceives themselves by running unto him, whom God then suffers to fall in their own snares, and justly permits them to be eluded with great efficacy and deceit, because they would not believe the truth, as Paul says. And as the devil is foretelling of things to come, it is true that he knows not all things future, but yet that he knows part. The tragical event of this history declares it, which the wit of woman would never have spoken before, not that he hath any presence, which is only proper to God, or yet knows anything but looking upon God as in a mirror, as the good angels do, but being forever debarred from the favorable presence and countenance of his Creator, but only by one of these two means, either as being worldly wise and taught by the continual experience, ever since the creation judges by likelihood of things to come according to the like that hath passed before, and the natural causes in the respect of the vicissitude of all things worldly, or else by God's employing of him in a turn, and so foreseen thereof, as aspirers to have been in him, in this, therefore we find that very much like Micah's prophetique choruses to King Ahab. But to prove this, my first proposition, that there can be such a thing as witchcraft and witches. There are many more places in scriptures than this, as I said before. As first in the law of God, as is plainly prohibited, but certain it is that the law of God speaks nothing in vain, neither doth it lay curses, nor enjoin punishments upon shadows, condemning that to be ill which is not in presence or being as we call it. Secondly, it is plain where wicked Pharaoh's wise men imitated ein number of Moses' miracles to harden the tyrant's heart thereby. Thirdly, not only Samuel to Saul, thirdly, said not Samuel to Saul that disobedience is as a sin of witchcraft, to compare to a thing that were not, it were to observe. Fourthly, was not Simon Magus a man of the craft? And fifthly, that what was she that had the spirit of Python, besides innumerable other places that were irksome to recite? End of chapter 1.